Hello and welcome back to an instruction video on the Multi BMD controller. This video will explain some of the functionality of the configuration setup. As explained in the previous video, we can use this to control many Blackmagic devices, and to accomplish this we need to be able to set up the IP address and the TCP port number of each device. This is accomplished by using the configuration menu, which is at the bottom of the home page. Now, this home page, when first started, will show each device as it is detected, and this is using the IP address and this TCP port number that we will set up in the configuration menu. Any device that it cannot find, it comes up and displays the message "no device." And any line that is just blank indicates that there's no IP address set. And in the case of this Multi BMD controller, if the first IP number is set to 0, it won't even go searching for it, and that will speed up your boot up. So from the home page we can select configuration. The configuration page gives you the ability to the 8 individual ports as seen on the home page, and you'll see there is set port A, set port B, set port C, set port D, set port E, set port F, and set port G and set port H. They're the 8, and then there's also the ability to be able to set the local IP and what we call the default IP. And what the local IP is it's the IP address of this actual unit, and the default IP is an IP address that has 4 digits that you can preset. And in most cases, all your devices, the first 3 numbers of the IP address are going to be the same, so it's just a matter of changing the 4th. But you'll see that once we get into setting the IP. At the bottom of the screen you'll see that there's menu items. Setup 1, I'll discuss that in a later video. It's basically not allocated yet, but there's many things that I need to do with that. The second one is the load and save parameters, which we'll talk about in a separate video. There's a button here to turn on and turn off the little flashing ID unit up here. This indicates the unit is functioning. The next item is screen brightness, which gives you the ability to be able to increase and decrease the brightness of the screen. Self-explanatory. And then there's the 5th item is set start delay. Now what this does is, I've discussed this previously, it sets the value of the unit sitting and waiting for all the connected devices to be contacted and then their data being downloaded. And this in some instances can take up to a minute depending on the device, especially if it's like a large video hub which has hundreds of inputs and outputs. So we don't want this unit starting up until all that data is received, so you can set the start delay here. That defaults to 3 seconds, but you can change that to anything you want if you've got something that's not being responsive quick enough. So we'll just go back and have a look at that. So if we set start delay, you'll see at the top here it shows your value of 3 seconds. That's all you have to do. Put your pointer down and just drag it up, and as you can see the number's increasing. You can go up to 99, yep, 99, and then you can drag it down to whatever you want. At any time you can just get in here and pick the value that we want. We'll set that back to 3, but you can also just tap it up there somewhere, anywhere in there, and it'll work out what position you're tapping it on. And once you've done that, you can select exit and it'll return back to the configuration page. Now much the same occurs with the screen brightness. It opens up a test pattern so you can get an idea of the screen brightness, and again you can just drag on the side. You can decrease and increase the brightness depending on your viewing, especially if you're viewing with scopes right nearby. It might be too bright and interfere with your viewing. So once that's done, again you can just press exit and we go back to the configuration. The running indicator, we can turn that off, turn it on. It's only because some people told me it was a bit annoying seeing it flashing. And then of course we can then set each of the devices' IP addresses. So if I say go to the first device, which is port A, you can see there is an IP address, and you have the TCP port can be either auto, and what that does is it, when the device starts up, if it doesn't have a TCP port number, it will go and search all the devices that it knows it could connect to. It will just need time to test all the devices. That's in auto. If you press auto, it'll step through the different devices, and these are the TCP port numbers that Blackmagic use for each of their devices. There are some devices in here that I've yet to write the software to communicate with, but it's there for the future. And as you keep pressing it, it will cycle through, and in most cases auto would suffice. Now, to change an IP address, there are two ways we can do it. We can do it on this particular setup IP page, or we can use it doing a keypad. But first of all, we'll show you this way. So to change the IP address, you just select one of the 4 number fields you want to change. Let's just go to this one. That's the 4th field, and this is the one that will always change. Once you select the field that you want to change, it will turn green. Then you can use the buttons down here. There's +1, +10, +100, and then there's -1, -10, and -100, so you can quickly go through those numbers. I'll put that back to where that was, and then once your numbers are set to what you want, you just press the number again that's green. In this case, it will then be set to that. We go back and have a look at that. You'll see there it is there. That's the number we started from. If you haven't selected a number, nothing will change, but if you select the number will turn green, and then you can add or subtract numbers as per the buttons down below. So we have +1, -1, +10, -10, +100, -100. Now you can also just press enter default, and that was the default number that I mentioned earlier in this video, and it'll set all 4 numbers. If I just go and set all these back to 0 and then press enter default, you'll see all 4 fields go to what was set in the default settings. Now if we want to set the IP address using the keypad, we just go enter using keypad, and then again the same thing, you select the number you want and then you can type it in. And then it will then update and then return back to the configuration screen. Now when you select a number to change, you'll also notice that a slider comes up, so you can actually run the slider up and down, and as you can see the number selected will change accordingly. So this is if you want to roughly get it into a ballpark so that you can then use the buttons below down here. So there's all the various ways to be able to adjust your IP addresses. Once you've done all your IP setups, you can then come out of the configuration just by clicking the top of the page. And you'll find in most pages, to get back to home page, you just click the top title bar. Now there's a secret little button here. If you click the very left hand corner, it does a soft reboot, and that way there you can then just check to make sure that your devices are where they should be. So what I'll do here, for instance, is that you'll see that's A, that's B, that's C, that's D, that's E, that's F, that's G, that's H. If I go down to E, you'll see nothing will select. So if I go in configuration now and go set port E, if I change that to 0, select it again, and then we're out, you will see that nothing displayed there at all because it hasn't been configured at all. If you have a look at F, you'll see F has got a value in there. And if I again turn that to 0 and exit, you'll see now that also won't display anything because it hasn't been configured. Now one last thing I'd like to discuss about the configuration. From the home page, you touch the very top right of the screen, you'll see that there is a support page, and this is information that you need to when you ask for support. And on this screen here we display the current software version, a specific license number for the software, and then there's a support ID that you need to quote as well. There's also a QR code that you can use to directly access the support page. Now this support ID number is generated within the device every time you need to access support, and this ID number is used to verify the legality of the software. To exit the support page, we just click the top of the page as we've said before. Well, that wraps up the configuration tutorial for the Multi BMD controller, and we'll see you again in the next tutorial.